Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Above Par Golf Show. This weekend we've got the Travelers Championship. This weekend it's going to be another good tournament, mainly because I think a lot of the lower players again are going to have a chance this weekend, similar to the Palmetto Championship. Although DJ dominated last year as well, I think this isn't going to be necessarily one for the big hitters. It's one of the shortest courses on the tour, so maybe the likes of Bryson and DJ aren't going to just dominate like everybody thinks this weekend. As I said, though, DJ is the previous champion. He did really play well that weekend. I think he shot something like a 61 or a 60 as well in round three to put himself in connection, which was incredible. Looking at the course itself, like I said, it is one of the shortest on the PGA Tour. Historically, fairways and greens have been some of the easiest to hit there. And at a par 70, it stretches around 6,841 yards. There's a reachable par 4, I believe, on the 15th, I think it is. And then there's a reachable in 2 par 5 on the 13th. So it'll be interesting to see how the players take advantage of those holes there. Yeah, and then in 2016, the course went through a little bit of a change, had some things changed on it in terms of like the design. I think the bunkers were restyled throughout the course. They incorporated some sort of new drainage into the sand for improved playability. And then the 17th green was rebuilt to increase the number of pin positions. And there were also small changes made to a number of putting services, including 10, 13, 15, and 16. So yeah, we can see there's been a lot of changes since 2016, and it's provided some really great events over those last few years. The average score since 2007 has been just around under 16. Of course, Jim Furyk in 2016, I think, made that history by shooting the final round of 58 or something it was. So yeah, it's had a bit of a history, this championship in the past. It's definitely not going to be a snooze fest after the US Open. I think strokes gained in terms of tee to green is going to be a real big key this weekend, and avoiding bogeys as well. I think any player that can do that this weekend is likely to be up there come Sunday. Now, in terms of the picks, some of the big favorites we're looking at this week. I think he's one of the favorites every week, but particularly this week, just because he's the defending champion, is DJ again. So like I said, DJ did shoot a 61 to put himself in contention last year in round 3, which was awesome. He finished with we can see here a 19th in the US Open, where he was kind of up and down again. He kind of showed glimpses of being back at his old self. But then also had a few little errors and just didn't manage to quite get right to the top of the leaderboard, but definitely kind of better than let's say the PGA, where he missed the cut. But yeah, he's been playing some decent golf. I think tee to green, like I said, is going to be really key, so that's going to go in his favor. His tee to green strokes gained has been up a lot. He just maybe needs to improve a little bit with the putter, as we can see here, only 0.2. But I think DJ is definitely, going to be a favorite for a reason. And the other favorite alongside him this weekend is Bryson DeChambeau. Seems to play well at the Travelers. Seems to play well. At Pete Dye courses in general. We can see here the history at this particular tournament: a 6th last year, 8th the year before, 9th before that, and then a 26th. And he's also on a decent little bit of form as well. Maybe not for his high standards, but a 9th at the Wells Fargo. And then he had that disappointing, I think, again, another up and down, not a tournament, maybe just a Sunday for Bryson, leading after the first 9 holes of the last round to then drop down and end up finishing 26th. It just kind of shows where he's at for me. His driving and some of his approach play to the green is just really kind of wild and reckless. And I'm not sure if he's going to get out of that. I mean, sure, he's going to win some tournaments and possibly a couple of majors, but it just feels like he needs to improve kind of that real touch of his game. So yeah, he's the other favorite. DJ, Bryson both coming in at 14-1 this weekend. A guy that I really like out here this weekend is going to be Patrick Cantlay. His game's looking much better recently, which is really cool to see. We can see here his recent form. He had that 15th at the US Open, and then the win at the Memorial, 23rd at the PGA, and 10th at the Zurich Classic. And we can see here his last 3 tournaments at the Travelers as well, with an 11th, 15th, and 15th in the last 3 years. Shows that he really also, likes this course as well, like some of the other players do. I think his putting's put him maybe in a little bit of a slump recently. But if he can get that going, which I think he has a little bit recently, he could be a really big favourite this weekend, and it looks that way coming in at 16-1. Tita Green, as I said, is going to be a big one, and I think Cantley's topped the charts pretty much with Tita Green. We can see here he's better than both DJ and Bryson in gained strokes on Tita Green. So yeah, it's going to be really good to watch him play this weekend. And he actually also shot a 60 as an amateur there in 2011. So it looks like it's one of the courses that he seems to like. Next up, and great to see him on the kind of top of the favourites list, is Paul Casey, the Englishman. Top 25 in the last 3 tournaments in the last 4 years. Sorry, here we can see he had the 32nd last year. Apologise for that. But then the year before that, he had the 5th, the 2nd, the 5th, and then a 17th there, which is again showing really good form in this particular tournament. And then we look at his recent form as well. He's only played in 4 tournaments in the last few months, but a 7th at the US Open, 4th at the PGA, and 21st at the Valspar. And then he had that miscut at the RBC. But I don't know. I mean, I just wonder whether it looks like he's having some breaks here in between each tournament, but then this week he's not. So it'd be interesting to see how he plays. But again, he's definitely another player that seems to like playing at the Travelers and playing on Pete Dye courses, and another player that is very good, Tita Green. As you can see here, the gain strokes for Tita Green. So we'll see how that goes for him. Maybe you can just see from this stat here that he does need to improve his putting a little bit. If he can get that going, could be a really good weekend for Paul Casey. A few more to just kind of move over really quickly. Patrick Reed. I kind of ummed and armed about putting him on. I really wasn't sure whether I wanted to put him as one of my kind of not picks, but maybe just like one that could win this weekend. I think it's always worth having him as a top 10. That's a given probably, but to win it, I'm just really not that quite sure on him. He's had a decent record at the Travelers, that 5th place in 2017, 11th here we can see in 2016. And then last week at the US Open, he had a pretty decent tournament, finished 19th, and then he had that 5th at the Memorial and 6th at the Wells Fargo. So he's definitely playing well. Another Tita Green player that's got good Tita Green stats, but he might need to get that putter going, which he has done recently, as we can see here, in order to win this weekend. Another man that's in really good form actually and loves this tournament is this man here, Brian Harman. We look at these stats here. He did miss the cut last year, but he's had an 8th and a 6th here. And he's also got a little bit of recent form as well, with a 19th at the US Open, 8th at the Charles Schwab Challenge, and then 18th at the Wells Fargo, and a 13th at the RBC. So a man that's playing pretty well. Coming in at 25-1. Patrick Reed's coming in at 25s as well, and Casey at 18s. So to be honest with Brian Harman, I think he might have been one of my picks if he was in the mid-range category. But at those odds, I'm not going to be taking him this weekend, I don't think. But again, possibly one for a top 10 finish if you maybe want to try and have him each way. Another couple of big players, I think this weekend is going to be Scotty Scheffler and Abraham Ancer. Scotty's played really well recently. The only thing with him, he doesn't really seem to play well at this tournament in particular. Another player that's got really good stats in terms of Tita Green. Off the tee strokes gained has been good as well. So he looks like he could be somebody that's gonna get it nicely to the green without too much hassle this weekend. So yeah, we'll see what he can do. He had a good tournament out there last weekend, so I think he's slightly coming back to finding some form. And we can see here as well at the Memorial had the 3rd place, not only playing well last week, and then the 8th at the PGA and 8th at the Zurich. But we can see here his record at this particular tournament. We've only played it once, I think, with a miscut. Abraham Ancer on the other hand, a player that I just can't stop kind of putting in my picks and saying that I like this guy to win. I mean, look at that recent form, and even the recent form at this tournament. You got a 14th at the Charles Schwab, 8th at the PGA, 2nd at the Wells Fargo, and then 5th at the Valspar, and then you've got an 18th from the RBC. And his last 2 years here at the Travelers have been 11th and 8th. And if we're talking about a course that's going to suit players playing well Tita Green, I don't think there's many better out there, maybe apart from Morikawa than Abraham Ancer. His tee to green stats just seem to be getting better and better as he moves on. Now, in terms of my pick from these favourites, it was a really, really tough one. I think number one, trying to pick between DJ and Bryson DeChambeau was really tough. And then trying to pick between the rest of those guys, between, Cantlay, Casey, Reed, Scheffler, Ancer. So I finally settled on the reigning champion, DJ, to win the tournament. He's my first favourite. And then my second favourite is going to be Patrick Cantlay. He's coming in at 16-1, so he's almost, as big favourite as like Bryson DeChambeau and DJ. So I was a little bit unsure whether I should be picking him at 18s, but I do think he's going to be in with a real chance come Sunday to win this tournament. So he's my second pick amongst the favourites. Moving into the mid-range now, and this is where it gets even more difficult to choose. We've got the man himself, Bubba Watson, that's won 3 times here at the Travelers. He's had a few good finishes recently, but he's still not quite back at his best game. I mean, we can see here he had these few good results that I just mentioned there, but this was a couple of months ago. He had the 18th and the 13th and an 8th. But then since then, he's had an 80th at the PGA, missed the cut at Memorial, which we would have expected better from him, and then a 50th last week at the US Open. So it depends how much you want to look into recent form in terms of the actual tournament itself, because, he's won here, as we know, 3 times, but then he's also missed 2 cuts in the last 5 years. So where do you go with that? It's just kind of really up and down for me. I wasn't sure whether he was going to be contending this weekend or not, but I just couldn't leave him out my picks, considering he's a 3-time world champion here. Now, looking at his kind of stats of how he's been playing with the different parts of his game, I don't think he's been that great in his approach all on and around the green. So that is just, again, another kind of thing that convinced me not to make him as my actual pick. Again, another top 10, top 25, sure. But I think with the fact that his approach game and the way he's been playing with the putting and around the green, it's just not been good enough to pick this weekend. The next player on my list is Harris English. So this guy's had a bit of a back injury over the last couple of months, but it seems like that's been and gone now. He's been gaining strokes in all parts of his game, had some good recent form, as we can see here, a 3rd last week in the US Open. And then he had that 40th at Palmetto, which I think was the one when he played a little bit poorly towards the end of the Sunday. He was actually in contention to win, I believe, and then ended up dropping right down. But still a good, strong 14th place, the 3rd place last week, and then he's had a 13th a few weeks before that. But another player that, if you look back at his form in terms of this tournament, the Travelers, it's just unfortunately not been that good. 3 missed cuts in the last 5 years, and then a 71st place doesn't give you a lot of confidence. Putting the tee to green strokes gained, as we can see here, have been good. So that is a bit of good news in terms of how we think this course is going to be set up for which type of player. So it could be worth a bet at 45-1 this weekend. Same odds as Bubba Watson, that comes in at 45-1 as well. Next player on my list is actually my first pick from this mid-range, Keegan Bradley. This is his home course in Connecticut. He's been in good form recently as well, apart from the miscut at the Memorial. Finished 17th at the PGA, 18th at Wells Fargo, 2nd at Valspar, and 4th at the Zurich Classic. And then we can also see his up and down form in this particular tournament, with a miscut last year, but then he had that 2nd place in 2019, and which I think was behind Chez Reavie, I want to say, and then the 8th place in 2017. Tee to green, again, we can see here his tee to green stats have been good. That's definitely going to go in his favor. But the thing for me with Keegan this weekend is how he deals with the putting, how he plays with that short stick is going to be the game changer, I think, for him. But coming in at 50-1, I think he's going to be a really good pick for that mid-range, and that's why I'm choosing him. The next man in the mid-range is going to be Charley Hoffman. I'm just going to try and find his stats for us here. Another player that's been doing really well recently. We look at his form here from a few weeks ago. He had that 3rd place at the Charles Schwab Challenge, the 17th at the PGA, and then a couple of top 20s here in 3 weeks in a row. And then looking at his last 5 in this particular tournament, it's not been too great the last couple of years, but he finished 3rd in the 2017 tournament, and then 15th in the 2015, and then 25th in 16. So he's had 3 top 5s there in the last 5 years. but he just seems like he is playing some good golf at the moment. So I definitely think he's there with a chance of doing something. And again, in terms of tee to green strokes, he's not been too bad there. Next man on the list, and I really hope this man does well this weekend, because he's been just kind of coming back and finding form, it seems, for quite a while, but he just can't quite get there. And that's Rickie Fowler. Pulling up his stats here, we can see that in the last kind of couple of weeks, he's just started to find that form, as I mentioned, coming off the back of a couple of missed cuts. So again, it's kind of, what do we expect from Rickie at the moment? Where's his game at? He's got that 11th at the Memorial and the 8th at the PGA, like I said, following those 2 missed cuts. But then it doesn't look like he plays this tournament much, because he's not got much history there. So I'm not 100% on how he's going to play, but I think just that recent form shows that he is getting into a little bit of a groove. And in terms of Rickie, I think something that's going to be helpful for him is the short irons and the putting, which he normally does pretty well. Although we do see here that the putting has been, let's say, average, and the tee to green strokes gain hasn't been maybe as high as some of the other players in the mid-range category. But he's coming in at 60 to 1. So that could be a nice little bet there if you're a Rickie Fowler fan. A few more just that I want to jump over really quickly. First of all is Justin Rose, another player that's kind of had a up and down season, but seems to be kind of past the worst of it, I'd like to say. He's not played here, I think, in 7 years, but when he did play at the Travelers, he had a really good record here. He used to play some really good golf. And in terms of his recent form, he did miss that cut at the US Open last week. But if we look at his tournaments before that, he's just kind of found that little bit of form: 20th at the Charles Schwab, 8th at PGA, and 11th at Zurich. So coming in at 66 to 1 could be a fairly decent bet. Although his tee to green strokes gained and kind of his game around the green, as we can see here, have been a little bit poor, which might just cost him from winning the tournament. But I think at least worth a top 10 bet there. And then the next man on my list is Aaron Wise, playing some really good golf at the moment, as we can see here. He's got the 9th place that he got at the Memorial. Sorry, just scroll this down for you. Then he's got that 17th at the PGA, 9th at the Wells Fargo. But another player that we can see just doesn't have some really great form at the actual tournament itself. So I'm not sure how much that means. For me, if a player is in good recent form, then that can mean a lot, and it doesn't really matter where you're playing. You're just feeling confident all the time. So could be a really good bet in the mid-range category at 90 to 1. Next player, another man that I hope, kind of like Rickie Fowler, finds his form really soon, because he is, just one of the greats, and it's kind of just been a struggle back to finding that good form for him. And that's Jason Day. Recent form doesn't say too much about him, but if we look at the actual tournament itself, we can see here that he's had an 8th place in 2019. He's had a 12th place in 2018. So, it looks like he does like this course. Kind of the opposite to my last pick with Aaron Wise. He's not had good recent form, but he's had good tournaments at this particular tournament. And coming in at 90 to 1, again, could be a nice little mid-range pick there. Now, the last person that I've picked in the mid-range, and my second pick, it's the man that for 3 rounds played pretty well last week in the US Open. Unfortunately for him, just kind of let himself down a little bit on the final round on the Sunday, and that's Mackenzie Hughes. He's another man that's had a low round here, I believe. He had a 60, which I think was last year, as well as DJ. I think he did it in round 1, but still a 60 is pretty good round any course. So yeah, coming in at 125 to 1, he's quite a good bet, considering he's somebody that has a decent track record at this course. Finished 3rd in that tournament last year when he did shoot that 60 in the first round. And he's also had a top 20 here in 2017. In terms of recent form, it doesn't look great if we look at all these missed cuts. But like I said, he did have 3 good solid rounds at the US Open last week. I think he just kind of fell short under the pressure on the last day, wasn't really accurate with his driver, and it just kind of let him down. But 125 to 1, I think he's going to be a really good pick. So he's going to be my second choice in that mid-range. Looking at the outsiders, the first man I want to start with is this man here, Taylor Gooch. Another player which I think has been really playing nicely recently, and mainly for that reason is that I'm going to choose him to be, you know, one of the ones that I'd recommend maybe putting as a top 10 bet, or maybe, you know, top 25 at a bare minimum. He should have a good tournament this weekend. So looking at his recent form, he hasn't played in a couple of weeks, but when he did, he had an 18th at the Memorial, a 14th at the Charles Schwab Challenge, and then here he's had a 26th and a 17th. So it's not bad form, but then we can see here those two missed cuts at this particular tournament. Looking at his stats over here, he's got decent tee to green stats in terms of strokes gained. Same with the putter, all above average. Just maybe needs to improve a little bit off the tee, and he could have a good weekend. Coming in at 140s, I think with all these outsiders and mid-rangers, they're just worth possibly a top 10 bet, an each way bet to try and win you some money. So Taylor Gooch coming in at 140 to 1 is my first outsider, but not my first pick in the outsider. My first pick in the outsider is a man that I think I picked him in the first couple of weeks, just because of, again, of his kind of recent form here from the Zurich. But the reason I picked Brendan Steele today for this weekend is just mainly because of his form at this particular tournament. Yes, he's got a 4th here in the Zurich Classic, but since then it's not been great. Maybe a 37th in the Memorial wasn't too bad, but then that miscut at the US Open, a 77th in the PGA, and the 70th in the Wells Fargo. But what I'm looking at here is this. So 6th last year when DJ won it, 21st in 2019 when Chez Reavie won it. He got that miscut in 2018, yes, but then another 2 top 20s in 17 and 16. So I think he's going to be a really good choice coming in at 140 to 1. He clearly likes playing at the Travelers. And with this kind of form here at 140 to 1, it's pretty hard for me to resist choosing Brendan Steele this weekend. Now, another few ones that I've got on the outsider bets. I would say these are definitely guys that I'm going to be putting in maybe a top 25, top 10 bet, because to be honest, they're not looking great. But in terms of looking at that outsider category, they're possible shocks, let's say. So Chesson Hadley is the first one. Came off a second at the Palmetto Championship. Yes, it's not been good before that, but again, you know, I take that kind of recent form pretty seriously. I think any player that can you know, have a load of missed cuts and then all of a sudden finish second at a championship, you know, albeit that it was one of those tournaments where all the favorites or maybe all of the bigger players weren't there. You know, there was still some pretty big players in that tournament, and to finish second is pretty impressive. We can see here his tee to green stats is going to let him down a little bit this weekend, because that is what's going to be key, as mentioned. But the putter has been okay for him, and hopefully that can get him out of some trouble. And he's coming in at 200 to 1. So again, could be another nice shock bet if he finishes in the top 10 for you. And then the third man, in this one is going to be David Lipsky. So he's coming off an 8th at the Palmetto, and his total getting strokes gained has been around 0.72 tee to green, and his putting has also been decent as well. So I think for somebody that's coming in at 200 to 1, he was just somebody else that I kind of wanted to get into that outsider category, just to see, you know, what he can do. I think with the main thing with these kind of people, you can bet them in a top 10 and get some really nice odds still. And all it takes is for them to put maybe a few good rounds together in one weekend, and all of a sudden you're winning yourself some money. And then the last couple I've got here is, first of all, Troy Merritt. Again, a guy that's been playing some decent little some form, I think, in both like recent form in tournaments, but also in the Travelers itself. So if I can just try and find his stats here. He's had 3 top 8 finishes in the last 6 starts in general, and he's had a top 10 in the Travelers before, 3 top 10s recently. So, you know, not too bad. He had a top 8, I think, at this tournament in the 2017. The only issue with him is that his tee to green and driving stats haven't been good of late. I mean, the hitting the fairways, as I mentioned at the start, should be okay. You know, this weekend it's going to be a little bit easier for some of the players. But in terms of the tee to green stats, that's the one that's going to be key for him, I think, if that's the one letting him down. But another player that, even though he's got those bad tee to green stats, he's got some good putting ones, and that might just save him. So he's coming in at 200 to 1. And then the final man that I've picked in the outsider bets, and this man is coming in at 275 to 1. So this is a bit of a big, you know, risk, I guess. Not a risk, a big shock if it comes in, and that's Vincent Whaley. Now the reason why I'm picking him is just because of this form. I mean, look at this form. He's had that miscut recently, so that's understandable. Not sure what's happening here. There you go. He's had that miscut recently, but then a 20th, 26. So, they're not top 25s, but they're pretty good stats for somebody that's coming in at 275 to 1. So we should be able to see it. Here we go now. He had the 20th at the Charles Schwab, 26th at the Wells Fargo, and the other 26th over the week after, 29th at Valspar, 29th at the Zurich Classic. So, if that's not good form, I don't know what is. Because I'm going to ignore this miscut here. It's not enough to put me off. I'm looking at this here. He's clearly in some sort of good vein of form. He had the week off for the US Championship. So maybe let's see what he can do this weekend. And coming in at 275 to 1, he's going to be my last pick. So just to summarize from the outsider dark horse category, I'm going for Vincent Whaley at 275 to 1, Brendan Steele at 140 to 1. And then in the mid-range category, we've got Mackenzie Hughes at 125 to 1. Keegan Bradley, the home favorite for me at 50 to 1, a favorite in the mid-range, and he's the home player this weekend, so that could give him an edge. He's coming in at 50s. And then my two big favorites is, of course, DJ Johnson. How can we not? Defending champion. He's coming in at 14s, and then Patrick Cantlay, he's coming in at 16s. So that's everything for this week. I hope you guys enjoy the weekend itself. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you did enjoy the content, please feel free to give me a like on the video. If you've got some ideas of your own, who you're picking this weekend, who do you think is going to play well, make sure to drop them in the comments so that everybody can talk about it. And if you do like the content, please make sure to subscribe so you can see all the next content that's coming up. I will also be releasing a podcast very soon, which will be basically talking with all sorts of different guests from the golfing industry. So if you're into that kind of thing as well, more reason to make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so that you can see all future content coming your way. So yeah, look forward to this tournament this weekend, and we'll be back next week with more picks for the next tournament. So thank you guys, and speak to you soon.